Hello, this is David with the Time Rift Arcade, and today I want to walk you through what we have to do for a full restoration. This is Street Fighter 2. This is a machine we recently picked up at an auction, and it's in pretty rough shape. So what I'm going to do is just show you all the different steps that we have to do to ensure that this machine is good enough to go out on the floor where people can play it. The first challenge is just getting the machine moved to a place where we have room to work on it. I've often compared this to playing a life-size version of Sokoban or one of these sliding puzzles. This situation will improve a lot as soon as the arcade opens and we move the majority of these out of the workshop. So let's just have a quick overview of what we're dealing with here. Let's start with the Marquee. It's faded and plastic pieces are flaking off of it. There's similar issues with the control panel artwork. The joysticks feel okay. This T-molding has seen better days, and there's lots of scuffs in the paint, and the T-molding is falling out at the bottom where I believe there is water damage. This is interesting. This is the only side art that came with this game. At this point, I should probably mention Street Fighter 2 was primarily sold as a kit game. And what that means is you only got the board and some bits of artwork. It was up to you to install it in a cabinet. That means possibly gutting a game that was getting old and out of style, or using a generic cabinet. The point is you won't find a lot of these that look the same. Now, I believe this cabinet was made by Dynamo and was a generic cabinet. Oh, and here's some trivia. See these two nails? This almost guarantees this was at one time located at an Aladdin's castle. They were notorious about using these little metal property tags that had a nail at each end. On the front, we have some nasty sticky tape. The coin door is okay. We will, of course, have to change the lock. And no surprise, we'll need to replace the power cord. Okay, the first thing I want to do is test it and see what condition it's in, electrically speaking. Apologize for the glare, but the CRT actually looks pretty good. The speakers sound good too, and clearly the board set is working. I had Ashton play the game for a few minutes to test out the controls and make sure everything was stable, and it seemed to play fine. So amazingly, for once, it doesn't appear that we need to work on the monitor, the controls, or the board set. I think it's going to be mostly the cabinet itself that needs repair. Okay, let's get to work on it. You can see the water damage here at the bottom. We can improve this a little bit with some Bondo. We need to remove this coin door, but it's locked and we did not receive a key with it. This is actually quite common, so we're just going to drill the lock out. Here's the coin box.
No money! I should at least get money for that. Oh, wait. There is a quarter. Dated year 2000.
Hey, that's older than me.
Hey, let me show you our stash. So in the kitchen we have these two cups. This one has tokens in it, and this one has money in it. And we've saved all of the money and tokens that we found inside of these machines when we opened them up. Here's a sample of some of the interesting ones. This is a Namco token, Peter Piper Pizza, Holiday Inn. I guess they used to have arcades at their hotels. Virtual Fun, Jeepers, Family Fun Centers, and Boomers. So as you can see, the machines we get come from all over. Anyway, back to work. Let's get this coin door out. Now I'm going to mix up some Bondo, and I'm just going to apply this stuff all over the sides to try to fill in the pits, scratches, and water damage as best as possible. And while that's curing, I wanted to turn my attention to another problem. Okay, so it's not uncommon for us to have to replace bad feet on these arcades. However, when we started looking at the bottom of this, we realized there are no feet, so we need to add some. It looks like there used to be some sort of feet on the bottom, but I'm not sure what kind. So I'm just going to install some of our usual feet. And there we go, one down, 3 more to go. Okay, the Bondo is cured, now to sand it down flush with the side. As an example, here's where there used to be some screw or nail holes in the side, which are now flush. This is always a good workout for the arm muscles.
Wax on, wax off.
Okay, that's done. Time to blow it off so we can apply some primer. And I'll take this opportunity to explain that ultimately we plan to put vinyl artwork on the side. However, for it to stick to the surface, it really needs to be painted. And this process also helps to make sure the surface is very flat. Any imperfections will show through the vinyl. Now, the front, on the other hand, we're just going to paint it black again, so we'll be treating it a little differently. Okay, the primer is done, and because we did this outside, it is expected to see bits of debris here and there, but that's fine because the next step is to sand the primer. Okay, now it's time to remove the control panel. This will make it easier to paint because we need to work on the control panel too. As for this plexiglass, I'm planning to replace this as it's pretty scratched up, but I'm going to leave it here for the moment while we paint. The paint is going on really nicely, and I think if all we planned to do was just to paint it black, that alone would be a massive improvement over how it looked before. Now, it's time to remove the plexi and the monitor bezel so we can paint around that. And that's where we found this little surprise. It's a dirt dauber nest. Looks like one of the little critters is still inside there. I wonder how long this has been there. Time to remove the marquee. We need to replace this anyway. It looks like it was originally designed to use an incandescent bulb. I'm going to replace that with an LED before we're done. Okay, a bit more painting. And while the paint is drying, it's time to turn our attention to this control panel. It's in pretty bad shape, and I wouldn't put this out on the floor like this. The first thing we need to do is remove all the buttons and joysticks from it. Now let's see if we can clean up this plexiglass. Now we'll remove the old artwork. Of course, this leaves behind a sticky residue, so we'll have to clean that up. And we'll take off that rust and old paint that's still on there. Now that it's all clean, I'll spray some primer on it. Then sand it, and then paint it. There we go, that looks much better. And this is where we realized another problem. Somebody at some point in time had spliced every single wire on these controls, and the way they did it was by twisting the wires together, soldering them, and then putting electrical tape around them. So we're going to completely redo these. Now, admittedly, the splices aren't very elegant, but that's not the reason. The main problem is they used electrical tape, and it's already starting to fall off some of the wires. Heat shrink is really a more permanent fix, but the only way to get the heat shrink on is by cutting the wire and resoldering it. So that's what we're going to do. Now, to be clear, the reason we're doing this is because if we don't, as this electrical tape falls off piece by piece, these wires will eventually wind up touching each other or grounding out to the metal control panel. So I'd rather spend a few minutes here to redo these than be dealing with a flaky or broken down machine on the floor of the arcade later on. So my brother Mike has been working on creating some side art for the machine. What he did was took the original artwork, which is just this little poster like this, and then expanded it out to fit the whole side of the machine. Now before you jump to your keyboard and start telling us how it's not original, keep in mind this was a kit game, so there is no specific standard by which to say what is or isn't original. Anyway, while that's printing, I wanted to replace the marquee light with an LED, and I noticed there was this plug, so I was like, what the heck does that go to? I couldn't see it connected to anything around back, but then I realized there was a light just out of my view laying on the bottom of the marquee. So I tested the light, and it actually worked, so I figured we'd just keep it, but it needs to be mounted properly, and I realized what they had done was just put one of these things in, so apparently the fixture originally held 2 incandescent bulbs. Now, we replace every marquee light with an LED, and I know some people would rather they stay original, but the truth is, we don't want to be replacing these bulbs constantly. That puts wear and tear on the machines, plus the heat can degrade the marquee artwork, and multiply that by 100 machines, and it really does affect our electric bill, not only in terms of power for the lights themselves, but for the air conditioning needed to counteract all the heat from those 200 marquee bulbs. Now think about it like this, if each machine had 2 40-watt bulbs inside, that's 80 watts. Multiply that by 100 machines, and now you're talking 8,000 watts. That would be the same as running 5 of these 1,500-watt space heaters, so it really adds up. Okay, light is properly installed. Let's test it. And it works. Now I'm going to vacuum out the bottom of this thing. Now it's time to put it on its side so we can install the side art. I'm going to lightly sand the paint to remove any debris that might have gotten stuck in it, and then we'll just give it a good cleaning. And here's the side art. I'll trim away some of this white area to make it easier to work with. Probably the most challenging part of this is getting it properly lined up how we want it on the machine. And once we're sure it's correct, we'll clamp it down to the side, and then we'll peel back just a little area on the bottom like this, and apply it to the cabinet. Once that's done, we'll remove the clamps, roll it up, and then start working at it from the other direction until it's all the way done. Next, we'll trim away the excess vinyl on the back and underside of the cabinet. However, we do things a little different on the front because it has to tuck under the T-molding. Speaking of T-molding, we decided to go with this purple color as we felt it was a good match for the artwork. It takes about an hour to put one side of this artwork and T-molding, but it is so worth it. Check that out. This side of the machine is now unrecognizable from how it looked before. We're going to use a similar procedure for the artwork on the control panel. Oh, and we even go so far as to clean up these rusty bolts that hold on the control panel. After sanding, we'll give them a coat of primer and then a coat of paint. Okay, so here's the panel currently, but we need to add these control labels, which can be a challenge to place them on correctly. The way we do this is to shine a light through the bottom so we can see how it lines up, and then tape it with some masking tape, peel the back off, stick it down like so. And as you can see, the hole lined up perfectly in the center. I'm going to start reassembling the control panel now. Now it's time to reattach it to the cabinet so that I can test all of the controls. And everything seems to be working fine, so let's move on to making some new pieces of plexiglass. I'm going to cut out a piece for the monitor and for the marquee. Cutting this type of material does require a special blade and also disabling the safety feature of the SawStop table saw. Okay, so it's time to turn our attention to this marquee, and earlier in the video I said that not only is it all cracked up, but I thought it was fairly faded, and well, here's the new one that we made, and you can tell there is definitely quite a bit of difference there, so it was absolutely faded. I have also cut out a new piece of acrylic or plexiglass for that to fit on. And then of course there's this bar that holds it all into place, and of course it has 4 holes. But originally, as we received it, it only came with 3 screws. This is quite common, of course. Not only are these, not only missing a screw, but none of these even match each other. They're just like whatever screws someone found laying around and just screwed them in there. So yeah, we're going to put new screws in this. Okay, so let's get this marquee mounted. That's going to look great. We'll just plug it in real quick to see how it looks with the backlight. And it looks great. And now it's time to mount the other piece of plexi over the monitor. I'll clean the CRT right quick since it was pretty dirty. Here's the bezel. Now for the new piece of plexi. That's looking great. There's really only one more thing we need, and that's the coin door. Okay, so I was getting ready to clean up the coin door, and one of the things I noticed that we didn't notice when it was in is it actually has more money in there. Look at all of that.
Not sure why. So there was all kinds of coins in here for whatever reason, including dimes and nickels, and I don't know what the heck that is. And also a single googly eye.
So I'll just add that to our existing stash. There's some really nasty adhesive on this door, probably from an old piece of tape. I tried a number of chemicals to remove it. The one that seemed to finally do the job was alcohol. And I'll just use some Windex to get all the rest of the dirt off. Unfortunately, the alcohol seems to have messed up the paint a little bit, so I have a quick fix for that. I'll just repaint the doors. I'll just mask off the coin mechanism, as that's faster than removing them. And there we go. Now that's going to look great. And while that's drying, I can go ahead and reattach the main part here. I think the new doors are ready now, so I'll remove the tape. Of course, we need to put new locks on these that are keyed to our master key. And since all of our games are free play, it's not like there'll ever be any money here to protect, but we still want to keep little kids from messing around inside the machines, so they still need locks. Now it's time to power it on for the final test. But before we give it a good look over, I'd like to remind you of what it looked like before we started. And here's how it looks now. So I just had a few final thoughts I wanted to share with you about this project. So first of all, I want to talk about how long did it actually take? Because, watching a 20-minute video doesn't always convey exactly how long it takes something in real life. So this project, we've been working on and off for about 6 weeks, and we probably have between 40 and 50 man-hours of labor involved in it, which is actually surprisingly typical for a machine of this age. In fact, the only thing that really sets this machine apart from a lot of our other restorations is that we didn't have to do any work on the board set or the monitor or the power supply, because usually we do, and that could easily add several more days of labor troubleshooting those things. One of the most gratifying parts of an arcade restoration is getting to spend a little time test playing the game. This may come as a shock to people, but I've actually never played Street Fighter of any kind up to this point. So I was trying to figure out some of the special moves, but not having a whole lot of luck. The only fighting game I was ever any good at was International Karate on my Commodore 64. Anyway, stay tuned for the next video from the Time Rift Arcade, and thanks for watching.